Welcome to my channel. My name is Meiko. As I mentioned last time, I'd like to talk about the characters from Xing in today's video. First, it's reasonable to assume that the country of Xing is inspired by China, since a mistress likely evokes late 19th to early 20th century Europe. The closest historical counterpart in China during that period is known in Japanese as Shin, exactly the same pronunciation as the fictional country name Xin. In its original Chinese pronunciation, however, it seems to sound closer to Qin. And while the historical country Xin is written with this kanji, the Xing in FULLMETAL Alchemist is written in katakana. I think this might be intentional to show that it's a fictional country and not Qin, the Qin dynasty. It makes me wonder how other countries that use Chinese characters might write it. Now let's get into the main topic. First, let's review the names of the characters from Xing. Mei Chen and the panda she brings along, Xiao Mei. Then there's Lin Yao. Also, there are the bodyguards, Lang Fang and Fu, whose names weren't mentioned in Volume 8, which I talked about in my last video. Honestly, as a Japanese person, I don't have much to say about their names specifically, but I can say that they sound distinctly Chinese to Japanese ears. I find it hard to explain why though. When it comes to Chinese-inspired characters in Japanese manga, you get names that sound like they could actually exist in China and names that would never actually exist. However, this isn't unique to Chinese-inspired characters. It happens with characters based on other countries too. Even characters with names that sound Japanese often have names that are unrealistic in the real world. Some works might do this deliberately for a reason, so you could say it's kind of a manga anime thing. Regarding the names of the characters from Xing, I would love to hear the opinion of someone knowledgeable about Chinese culture. Personally, I feel like the names seem realistic. Could they be old-fashioned? If so, that would fit the setting of FULLMETAL Alchemist quite well. I'll continue talking about the names. In the Japanese version, the names of characters from Xing are written in katakana. In manga and anime, names of non-Japanese origin are often written in katakana, like the characters from A Mistress in FULLMETAL Alchemist, including Ed. However, when it comes to Chinese-style characters specifically, their names are sometimes written in kanji since China also uses kanji. But as I mentioned, the names of the characters from Xing and FULLMETAL Alchemist are written in katakana. Using katakana has the advantage of being easier to read. Since the readings of kanji differ between Japan and China, writing Chinese-style names in kanji can make them unfamiliar and harder to remember for Japanese readers. On the other hand, since each kanji has a specific meaning, the meaning of a name can change depending on which kanji are used, even if the pronunciation is the same. This meaningful aspect is lost with katakana writing. I imagine that in manga adaptations for other countries that use kanji, the names of Xing characters are written in kanji. I'm curious to know which kanji are used. If anyone knows, please let me know. One more thing to add about the names is the order of the family and given names. I believe China generally follows the same order as Japan, with the family name coming first and the given name coming second. By this logic, Lin and Mei should be Yao Lin and Chan Mei, but in the work, the order is switched. There are several possible reasons why they are given as Lin Yao and Mei Chan. First, since Xin in FULLMETAL Alchemist isn't actual China, the naming customs might be different, and it might be their custom to say their given name first. Second, as I'll discuss later, the characters from Xin have learned the language of Amistris. They might introduce themselves that way to adapt to the customs in Amistris. My headcanon leans towards the latter. That's all for the topic of the names of the characters from Xin. Next, I'd like to touch on the way dialogue is written for characters from Xin. I'm bringing this up because the Japanese version uses special notation for the characters from Xin, compared to other characters' dialogue. It will be interesting to compare this with the version from your country. Within the story, characters from Xin speak both the language of Amistris and Xin. This makes them stand out from the other characters. There are two main methods for depicting multiple languages in manga. The first method is to present the different languages as dialogue. For example, even in a manga that is mostly written in Japanese, when a character speaks English, the dialogue may be written directly in English. To help readers understand, a translation note may accompany the dialogue, or the character's reaction and context may provide additional clues. The second method is to write the dialogue in the same language but use different notation or fonts to show that the characters are speaking a different language. FULLMETAL Alchemist uses the latter method. When the characters from Xin speak the language of Amistris, their lines are written similarly to those of the other characters. Since it's the same language, the writing is generally consistent. However, one difference stands out. The endings of the characters' lines from Xin are almost always written in katakana. For example, there's Mei's line, 秦から来ました. This means I came from Xin. Typically, the ending ta would be written in hiragana. Here, however, it's written in katakana. This seems to be a stylistic choice to express that they are speaking a language that is not their native tongue. Writing endings in katakana can express heightened emotion, but it's also used to indicate a direct or unique way of speaking. In fact, in the speech balloon where I'll ask Lin, "Are you from abroad?" the Japanese version has small text that says, "You have a slight accent." When characters speak a language that isn't their native tongue, it can be conveyed by forcing them to use weird grammar rules or by writing the entire sentence in katakana, which gives Japanese people an unusual feeling. The technique used for the characters from Xin in a FULLMETAL Alchemist, in which only the sentence endings are written in katakana, is a more subtle approach compared to this method. Yet, I think it effectively conveys the foreigner bias as seen by Ed and al. This kind of expression might be a unique stylistic choice of the Japanese language. I'm curious how English and other translated versions convey the feel of speaking a non-native language. If you have read versions other than the original Japanese manga, I'd like to hear whether the expression felt natural or perhaps a bit exaggerated. Since portraying characters speaking a foreign language can lead to stereotypical or offensive impressions, depending on how it's done. I'd also like to hear your thoughts on how such expressions are handled in other languages. So far, I've talked about how lines are written when the Xing character seems to be speaking a language from a mistress. From here, I'll move on to the notation for lines in which the Xing characters seems to be speaking their own language. For example, dialogue spoken only among characters such as Lin, Lanfan, and Fu, or lines that represent their inner thoughts are likely in the Xin language. A major feature of these lines is that they are written horizontally. This is significant because Japanese manga is generally written vertically, which might be something not everyone knows. Unlike English, Japanese is a language that can be written both horizontally and vertically. Vertical writing is commonly used in traditional and narrative contexts, such as in newspapers, novels, literary works, and manga. In contrast, horizontally writing is used in modern, practical contexts, such as on the web, in business documents, and in textbooks for subjects other than the Japanese language. Like English, horizontal writing is read and written from left to right. In vertical writing, letters are arranged from top to bottom, with lines progressing from right to left. As a result, when reading vertically written text, you turn the page from the right. This is also why Japanese manga are read right to left, right opening. As a Japanese person, I never consciously thought about it because it felt so natural. But I imagine right opening manga are a difficult format for readers in many countries. Hopefully, knowing the reason behind it makes more sense. Now let's get back to the topic. I find the technique of using horizontal text to indicate dialogue in a different language fascinating. It's great how easy the switch is to understand. While English can't use vertical and horizontal text to show this kind of contrast, it would be nice if the difference were conveyed in some way, perhaps through italics or a different font. I'd really appreciate it if you could share how it's handled in English editions. Also, I assume the horizontally written parts are Shin language not simply because the text is horizontal. Unlike the lines where they speak a mistress language, the endings aren't written in katakana. This makes me think they're speaking fluently, which suggests that these lines are in the character's native language. That's all for now. In this video, I focused on the characters from Shin. In the FULLMETAL Alchemist story, there are characters who come from outside a mistress, giving them a unique position as foreigners to Ed and the others. It reminded me once again just how much thought is put into the details, such as how their lines are written. Please feel free to comment on feedback and questions. In the next video, I plan to talk about Volume 9 of FULLMETAL Alchemist. Thank you for watching so far. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!